I introduce myself. I'm Alessandro TERRERI, and I work on NCPA mitigation using a new approach based on neural network. And I am almost a PhD student, or at least I hope to be so at the end of the talk. Anyway, sorry. In this talk, I will introduce you the non-common path aberration in the particular context of our instrument, and then I will show you how to implement the neural network, how I implemented in my case, and then some statistics and in what we call it fast imaging and also with long exposure. SharkVis instrument is an high contrast and high resolution adaptive optic assisted optical imager at large binocular telescopes, and it will work obviously on the visible wavelength, and it will exploit, sorry, I lost, okay, and we'll exploit the concept of the fast imaging. These are the images taken with 1 kilohertz with the forerunner of SharkVis at the Large Binocular Telescope. Inside our instrument, we expected a not common path aberration around 30 to 50 nanometer RMS, and I don't have to tell you that this NCPA depends on different factors, like, for example, the pointing of the telescopes, the temperature, so it changes according to if it is night or day, and also misalignments of the optical elements. The most important thing is that they can evenly affect the stray ratio when we are working with the visible wavelengths, which is a higher issue for the visible. There are a lot of methods to measure and remove this NCPA. The classical method is based on trial error for an example for first light adaptive optics at large binocular telescopes. There are also the phase diversity approach, which will be used in the Shark counterpart of the SharkVis, which is SharkNear. And I worked on on an existing code called WRS, which means Wavefront Reconstruction Software, for my master thesis, which studied the morphology and the intensity distribution of the extrafocal plane image. Now I'm working on a neural network approach, and the question is, are we able to use the information of the morphology of the point spread function to implement an image recognition? And so the question is, can we do the same for the point spread function? Apparently it seems to be so, and this is the way we do it, and in a moment I will tell you how. We created a dataset of simulations of aberrated extrafocal point spread function created with a physical optical propagation. And then obviously this simulation are in the context, so with the optical scheme of SharkVis, and they represent short exposure. This is in order to use the fast imaging technique, and obviously all the simulations are done at 650 nanometers in order to exploit the young exoplanets formation, which is one of the science target of SharkVis. And once we have done that, we use the principal component analysis to reduce the dimensionality of the problem. And this is made with a simple multi-layer perceptron with a single hidden layer. We saw that is sufficient for our case. So the idea is that we created a dataset of simulated point spread function in the extrafocal plane, and because we are the one who create this simulation, we know exactly the Zernike coefficients injected, And on the other branch, we use all these simulations to create a principal component analysis and reproject all the images, having in this way all the coefficients for each images. In this way, we have an input and an output for the neural network. And just to have an idea of a particular case, we started with 5,000 image samples with coefficients that are between -50 and +50 nanometers, going from Zernike 5 to Zernike 15. This is because we saw that it's sufficient for our case, and they are uniformly random distributed. This is one of the image of the dataset. In this way, we make the principal component analysis, and we saw that for our purpose, it was sufficient. It was widely sufficient to have 500 components. In this way, we have 5,000 of images of samples, and we divided it in 3 parts. In the first part, we have the training set, and another part, which is the 20% of this portion, which is the 80% of the whole dataset. And this is made in order to make the neural network work. The neural network, as I said, is formed by 500 neurons corresponding to the principal component basis on one end. On the other end, we have the response in Zernike. And once we have done that, we can run the neural network. And what we saw is that after just for some epochs, is able to minimize and understand. So what kind of aberration are inside the images. So in this way, we have just, for example, taking one images of the test set, we are able to see to predict, so to understand if it's working or not. And as you can see, probably not. But because they are so overimposed, they are one over each other. So, and with red dot, we have the predicted one by neural network, and the green one is the nominal injected, corresponding to one of this test set. So, this is what at the end we obtain. And I know what you're thinking about. No, it's not copy and paste. And in fact, just to show you that it's not a trick, here you can say, you can see some difference between the 2 images. So with one image seems to work really well, but what happens if we want to exploit with the fast imaging? To answer to this question, we created a new dataset composed, even in this case, going from zeta 5 to zeta 15 in Zernike, random uniform, as we saw. So it's a copy, if you want, of the test set. And in this way, we can see that studying the prediction error, we have that RMS is around 2.53 nanometers. But this is not sufficient, because what happens if the neural network model which we have trained is we inject some things that the neural network is not able to understand. So we created a new dataset with a wide range of Zernike, with obviously random uniform even in this case. And we have that even if in the images there are something that the model is not trained to understand, it is able to have a mean value around 0 for each Zernike. As you see, this is the error between the predicted and the real values. At the end, we can insert a new aberration, just because in the previous slide we are imagining that this aberration, this new aberration, represents a turbulence, and so we can set now an offset which is constant of Zernike comma of 35 nanometers, and we can see that the neural network is still able to reach an error which is around 0, so it seems to work even for the statistic case. And this, at the end, is the results. In fact, we have we have to work also with long exposure images, and for this reason, we just add all the images in the case of without NCPA as a reference, and then we injected an NCPA as before. We can see that the peak value seems to degrade, but after using the neural network, after the prediction of the neural network, we have recovered, if you want, what we have injected as a non-common path aberration. So, according to our study, which is a preliminary study, this neural network seems to represent a new way to measure this non-common path aberration at the focal plane, and seems to be a really powerful tool that can be used especially in nighttime data collection and according to the target we are pointing at. Thank you for your attention.